Okay, welcome to Unit 9, Imperialism. So this is actually a pretty interesting unit. I know some of you are just dying to get to our world wars, and we're getting there. Everything that you're learning about from Unit 7 and nationalism on until we hit the wars, it's all going to be building up into our world wars. So before we get there, though, there's one thing that I want you to remember about imperialism, and it's this. Okay, so in all seriousness, though, before we can get into who takes over who and why and all that kind of stuff, you've got to understand some of the background theories and scientific thoughts that were going on at the time. So let's jump right on into that. Before we can get into that, let's talk about these scientific theories. So it all starts with Charles Darwin. I'm pretty sure you've all heard of Charles Darwin before. His line of thinking was very controversial back then, and it still is to some extent today. Darwin was a biologist from Great Britain. He wrote several books, but one of his most well-known books was The Origin of Species. Now, the official title of the book is On the Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection, and it was published in 1859. Now, in this book, Darwin was a very strong proponent of the survival of the fittest theory, okay? And according to this line of thought, populations often grow faster than the food supply. So there ends up being competition for food. So think about it this way. Let's imagine that I'm going to cook a huge feast for our class, and I decide that I'm going to cook all the food myself and not have anything catered. Well, there's only so much that I can do in my kitchen at home and by myself. So while I bring the food for the feast, there may not be enough for everyone. And let's face it, how well do you think everyone is really going to look out for one another? So if you came to class on that day and you're starving, and you'd better get what you can while you can get it, because there might not be a lot of food there. So if you come from a large family and you have a lot of siblings, especially if you're the smallest sibling in your family, you totally get this concept, right? So Darwin's theory stated that only the members of a species that survive are those that are the fittest or best adapted to their environment, okay? All right, are we good? So Charles Darwin's writings definitely impacted others. Herbert Spencer was a sociologist from England, and he read the work of Charles Darwin and was influenced by his theory of natural selection. Spencer is credited with coining the term social Darwinism. He took the survival of the fittest line of thinking and applied it to facets of society, politics, and economics. And here's what his theory basically stated. First, that human life is a competition. Every single human is in competition with everyone else. Also, you think you're fit to survive? Well, that this whole survival of the fittest thing is a bit silly and that you would totally survive, well, you better be wealthy and you better be successful. Because according to Spencer, if you are poor, you're going to stay poor, and that's because you are weak. All right? So Spencer, he also thought that the government needed to stay out of things. Okay? He thought it was best to just let things happen as they would, and that the government would only upset the balance of natural selection. So folks who prescribe to this line of thinking are referred to as social Darwinists. And there were some social Darwinists who took this philosophy and applied it to national conflicts as well. When used in this manner, social Darwinists were able to justify military force when used. So if you think about Unit 7, when we talked about nationalism, this whole survival of the fittest theory was also used by nationalists as well as imperialists. And you're going to see how in this unit. So this unit is all about imperialism, but what is it exactly? Well, the textbook definition is, quote, a policy in which a strong nation seeks to dominate other countries politically, economically, or socially, end quote. You'll also hear imperialism referred to as colonialism, as it is the time when dominant industrialized countries were trying to gain as many colonies as possible. And these countries that are trying to take over other countries and form colonies, they're called mother countries. The age of imperialism lasted from around the mid 1800s all the way until the mid 1900s. So until just about 70 years or so ago, okay? Without a doubt, the most imperialistic country was Great Britain, okay? But there were other imperialist countries as well. France, the United States, the Netherlands, Belgium, they were all in a mad dash to gain territory. Now, in the questions column of your notes, I want you to give me one sentence explaining this political cartoon. But before you do that, let me give you a little help. There was this saying at one time that the sun never set on the British Empire. So I want you to look at this political cartoon, think about that saying that the sun never sets on the British Empire, and write in your questions column, what do you think that means? What is this political cartoon illustrating here? So take a second, click pause, and do that now. Okay, this is Queen Victoria. She was the longest reigning queen of England until 2015. She didn't live till 2015, but somebody else ruled later. Okay, anyway. So this is Queen Victoria, until 2015, longest reigning queen of England. She ruled for 63 years. She came to rule England when she was 18 years old and ruled from 1837 until her death in 1901. Queen Victoria ruled during much of the age of imperialism. And if you happen to watch Victoria on PBS, that's like their story of her life. Okay, so that's a pretty interesting show if you're interested in her. All right, so what does imperialism look like? I mean, yeah, it's countries trying to take over other countries, but what does that mean? Imperialism will look like one of three ways: a colony, a protectorate, or a sphere of influence. Let's start with a colony. So a colony is when a territory is directly controlled by another country. A few examples from history: the 13 colonies before the United States of America declared independence from Great Britain. Also, Somaliland was a French colony in East Africa. And here's another one. Britain controlled India and Australia. Now, those were under British control until Australia gained independence in 1901, and India didn't gain their independence until 1947. It's really not all that long ago. The next type of colonialism or imperialism is a protectorate. Now, a protectorate is a country that has its own government, but its foreign policy is determined by another country. For example, Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is a protectorate of the United States. It is its own country, but we direct their foreign policy, meaning we direct how they interact with other countries. And the third type of colonialism or imperialism is a sphere of influence, which is defined as a country whose economy and trade are controlled by a foreign country. It's when an outside power claims exclusive investment or trading privileges. One example from the past is China, and you can see in the political cartoon that many countries are represented here as trying to get a piece of that pie or trying to get a piece of China to control. Okay. All right, so we've chatted about what imperialism is, but why does it happen? So think about our last unit. It was all about industry rising and new methods of making or doing things. So with the rise of industrializations, imperialism increased as well because of the industrialized countries like Great Britain. They were seeking raw materials in order for industries to continue making goods, but also for new markets where they could sell these goods as well. The next reason is nationalism. Okay, nations felt that in order for them to be respected, they had to have colonies, and lots of colonies, not just one or two. If you think back to Unit 3 when we talked about Spain and how they wanted to vastly expand the Spanish Empire, these countries felt like they had to have many, many, many colonies all around the world. And the third reason why imperialism happens is because of racism. Okay, now Europeans mistakenly thought that they were superior to other races and cultures across the globe. Their reasoning behind why they were superior to others was because of their advancements in technology. This was the evidence or their proof that clearly they were superior. And we're going to take a look at this in a walkabout here in class. So we'll go into more detail on this in class. All right, the final reason for imperialism is religion. Christian missionaries were on a mission to spread Christianity and keep Islam from spreading. The missionaries would go into these new areas and set up schools, churches, hospitals, as well as helping with social issues like sanitation. Okay, let's look at the Ottoman Empire. So how did it come to be one of the largest and most powerful empires? Well, if you took World History 1, then you should remember that the Ottoman Turks defeated the Byzantine Empire when they captured the city of Constantinople in 1453. This is also when the city was renamed Istanbul. But why did Constantinople fall? Why was it defeated? Well, during the Age of Exploration unit, we talked about the explorers and the routes that they traveled. Countries were desperate to find new trade routes when the old ones had been blocked or could no longer be accessed. Another factor that led to the rise of the Ottoman Empire is that although the Ottoman Turks were Muslim, they practiced Islam, they were very tolerant of other monotheistic faiths at first. So when folks came in who were Jewish or Christian, the Muslims were okay with that for a while. So as the empire began to spread, and please label these on your map and your notes, the empire started in Central Asia, and then it spread to southeastern Europe, which included the Balkan Peninsula, then on to northern Africa, and finally into Southwest Asia, or the Middle East. There were two very popular exports from this area, and those were coffee and ceramics. So ceramic tiles like you see here, ceramic vases, ceramic dishes, lots of ceramics. Coffee was big too. And eventually, the Ottoman Turks became united in the religion of Islam, and they no longer were tolerant of other religions. So the Ottoman Empire does not last forever, though, and we're going to talk more about that at the end of World War I. But Suleiman the Magnificent was the last great Ottoman sultan. He died, and although the Ottomans had attempted to fit into the modern world, they just were not able to hold off the imperialistic Europeans. So once Suleiman died, the Ottoman Empire was certainly weakened, but they were able to hold out for about 350 more years. The Ottoman Empire finally came to a close at the end of World War I. And after World War I, many of the countries that had been part of the Ottoman Empire began to have strong feelings of nationalism and wanted to become independent and not ruled by anyone. So we've seen this happen before. So we're going to see what it looks like now that this empire has fallen. Okay, so that wraps up day one. Next video will be all about imperialism in Africa. So we're going to look at North Africa, South Africa, and then we'll have an activity in class to do. So if you missed anything, make sure you go back and rewind, catch your notes again. Remember that if you do rewind, you must answer the questions. It will completely erase all of your answers that you've done if you go back and you retry or you restart this video. So make sure you answer all of these questions as you go through. All right, I'll see you in class.